Module 4 of the Sanitation Safety Planning methodology. My name is Leonela Barreto-Dillon and I will be your guide in this module called Develop and Implement an Incremental Improvement Plan. Remember that in Module 3 we identified the highest priority risks. Now in Module 4 it is time to select new control measures or other improvements that address these risks. With this, we make sure that funding and efforts target the highest risks with the greatest urgency. In Module 4, we will consider options to control the identified risks, use selected options to develop an incremental improvement plan, and then implement the improvement plan. Our main output is an implementation plan that should ensure the protection of exposure groups most at risk along the sanitation chain. For Module 3, the SSP team will have a comprehensive list of hazards and hazardous events ranked according to their level of risks. Module 4.1 encourages the SSP team to consider a variety of ways to control risks, reducing risk levels. Improvement options include the following: technical control measures, managerial and operational control measures, behavior change measures, and regulatory measures. Let me explain each of them. Technical control measures, also called technology upgrades, refer to the construction or refurbishment of sanitation works, as well as the establishment or improvement of a service within the sanitation chain. Examples include upgrading of toilets and containment technologies, repairing existing sanitation systems, construction of fecal sludge transfer stations and sewer discharge stations, or additional or new treatment plants or process elements. Managerial and operational control measures refer to methods, procedures, and routines to carry out a specific activity within the sanitation service chain. It includes the establishment of support systems for information management. Management procedures also describe how people must be organized and trained to carry out their work. Examples include the development and adherence to standard operational procedures or SOP, training of key actors in service delivery, vector control programs, as well as operational measure specifics for reuse such as scrap restriction and withholding times. Another important improvement option is behavior change measures. Behavior change is now seen as an essential component of sanitation programs. Behavior change among a range of stakeholders is necessary for sanitation interventions to improve public health. Depending on the specific situation, desired use behaviors may include abandoning open defecation and adopting safe sanitation facilities, ensuring the regular emptying of on-site facilities, connecting to a sewage system where available and paying the service charges, and wearing personal protective equipment. Different approaches are used for behavior change. These include information, education, and communication-based messaging approaches, community-based approaches, social and commercial marketing approaches, and approaches based on psychological and social theories. Chapter 5 of the 2018 WHO Guidelines offers an entire chapter on this topic. Another key improvement option has to do with regulatory mechanisms such as legislation, regulation, standards, and guidelines. Areas that may require legislation and regulation are presented in the 2018 WHO Guidelines in Chapter 4. For instance, For toilets, there could be a bylaw with technical standards for toilet room and substructure. Also for containment, there could be a decree to register on-site facilities. Licensing is a procedure to regulate fecal sludge emptying trucks. The various steps in sanitation service change differ in their nature, requiring a corresponding range of regulatory mechanisms. Ways in which the different steps can be regulated are illustrated in Chapter 4 of the 2018 WHO Guidelines. Some examples of regulatory mechanisms include technical standards for sanitation infrastructure, building and planning codes and standards, public health and/or nuisance abatement legislation, public utility regulations, licensing, and standards for safe reuse. Sanitation systems should provide a series of barriers against different types of hazards. It is always recommended to take a multi-barrier approach. Every time when considering improvement options, we need to think about all types of measures in each step of the sanitation system. For instance, at the toilet step, we might propose the installation of flush toilets. However, this must be accompanied by other non-technical measures, for instance, the training of masons for correct installation, a program to encourage correct use and maintenance of the toilet, and technical standards on material, dimensions, and locations. At the containment, storage, and treatment step, we might think about installing sealed and impermeable septic tanks. Also, we should be able to monitor, so building a database of on-site sanitation infrastructure will be an option. Furthermore, a program to encourage the refurbishment of non-sealed containment tanks among households, as well as a guidelines on periodic inspection of on-site systems by authorities, could be implemented. While considering improvement options at the conveyance step, we could think about installing fecal sludge transfer stations, establishing a call center for septic tank emptying, developing a consumer protection program, and licensing emptying service providers. Likewise, while developing improvement options for treatment, we might consider the construction of a fecal sludge treatment plant with standard operating procedures for operation and maintenance. To keep workers safe, an internal awareness raising program could be implemented, as well as the publishing of guidelines on control of nuisance from treatment facility. For reuse, to protect farmers, we might construct an additional treatment of dried sludge, while to protect the health of consumers, we could train farmers on crop selection and start a household food safety program. From the regulatory perspective, standards for sludge products could be published. Now, when selecting control options, take into account the potential for improving existing controls, the cost of the control options, the technical effectiveness, the acceptability and reliability of the controls in relation to local cultural and behavioral habits, the responsibility for implementing, managing, and monitoring the proposed new controls, and the potential for the control measures to work under different scenarios of climate change. In Module 4.2, once the most appropriate control measures for each risk have been identified, the SSP team can record the planned new and improved controls in an improvement plan. Chapter 4 of the 2018 WHO Guidelines offers an interesting piece of information about planning sanitation systems. It indicates that to formulate inclusive, equitable, and practical solutions, it is essential to understand the existing mix of sanitation systems in use and to plan how that mix should change over time as progress is made. A consequence of this approach is the incremental improvement of sanitation in different places and at different times. Interventions can be targeted and sequenced to maximize their positive impact on public health. This can deliver much greater improvements in the short to medium term than the master planning approach that sets long-term targets but tends to miss intermediate steps. This figure is an example of how technology targets can be visualized, showing phasing out of on-site sanitation systems to achieve universal access to safe sanitation systems over time. The time frame to achieve sanitation targets typically falls well beyond the normal time horizons of electoral cycles or externally funded projects, which is 3 to 5 years. Sanitation planning, therefore, should be institutionalized and integrated into government planning, budgeting, and finance systems. While preparing the incremental improvement plan, you should prioritize improvements based on hazards with the highest risks. Identify the person or agency responsible and all the timelines. You also should ensure coordination. The SSP team may also choose to select and implement more affordable interim control measures until sufficient funds for more expensive options are available. The incremental improvement plan should allow for adaptive management processes suitable to respond to emergent and unforeseen conditions. For instance, this may include incorporating an emergency management plan for specific climate-related hazards. Model 4.3 is the actual implementation of the improvement plan, with the objective of achieving the expected benefits. To be able to implement successfully, we need to have a clear plan of who is involved, the time frame, the cost, and how the project management is going to be carried out. Because of the complexity of sanitation, the success of implementation depends on the local oversight and coordination to ensure that all the complementary components of the service chain functions effectively together. Great! So we have now completed Module 4 of the SSP methodology. You have learned how to consider options to control identified risks, use selected options to develop an incremental improvement plan, and implement the improvement plan. I recommend downloading the 2018 WHO guidelines and learn more about improvement options at each step of the sanitation system in Chapter 3, regulatory measures in Chapter 4, as well as behavioral change measures in Chapter 5. Also, you should carefully read Module 4 of your SSP manual. In the following lecture, we will continue with Sanitation Safety Planning methodology and specific Module 5, monitor control measures and verify performance. Thanks for watching and happy SSP!